Hello, welcome to today's The Word in the Flash. I'm Dr. Freddie B. Wilson. Today's subject is Don't Get It Twisted. While working through the confusion of trying to follow God's will, one of the hardest things to do as a Christian is to take a step that you think to be foolish and also know God will back you up on something He told you to do that you didn't quite fully understand. At that time, God told you to trust Him and to just do it. And oftentimes we're hesitant when we're doing things, especially if it's something that we're unknown, that we're fearful of, and that we just have never done before. I experienced some delays in writing my book, The Blessings of Obedience, due to a lot of different things going on in my life at the time. And at one point, I thought maybe I should just give up writing. I took the steps that God wanted me to do, only to later feel regret because things didn't go the way I thought they should go after I knew God led me to do those things. I experienced some difficulty along the way, and I had to realize that even though I experienced some personal difficulty, God had my back all along the way. In the summer of 2013, my job went through a reorganization that left me with a reassignment to Tampa, Florida. At first, I thought this was going to be a problem because when I relocated to Atlanta many years ago, I thought that would be my last move. I was finally home and I wouldn't have to leave again. How many of you know that sometimes God will have to give you out of your place of comfort in order to bless you? In relation to the new job, I had to realize that God really blessed me to be in a great location, to have a great job. On the other hand, it was difficult for me to consider this move because I would have to sell the house we love in Atlanta to find a home in Florida. And my wife had just found a great job that she was getting good money for. And my girls were in high school getting ready to do their senior year. And I thought this was a very difficult time for me to consider moving. And I didn't know what to do. The next problem I was dealing with having to move was my 18-year-old daughter had just graduated and she wanted to go to school in Atlanta. Had we moved the family, then we would have to put her up in the dormitory there or an apartment. And at that time, we didn't have the means to put her up in an apartment. So I was really concerned about having to move at that time to Tampa. And we had so many other things going on there in Atlanta. The last problem was that I felt God really was going to bless me to get past was that God had showed me many nice houses in Tampa that we could move our family into if I sold my house in Atlanta. But the houses were way more expensive for getting a comparable house here than I thought I could afford. And I was really concerned about that. So we started talking to some realtors and some finance companies. And it wasn't very good news at first when they came back talking about having stronger credit scores and what have you. And I was really kind of floored when I thought, Lord, I know you blessed me to do this thing, so why isn't things lining up? Like I said, even though I knew God was the God of all circumstances, I was floored by what seemed to me be my inability to purchase another home for my family. I wondered if God was going to bless me to pay the house off in Atlanta so we could buy us another home in Tampa. And things just didn't seem to be working out by the way I thought. Because, I don't understand how the rest of the world operate when it comes to credit scores and what have you. But how many of you know that God can bless you beyond your credit score or beyond your circumstances? I had to find out the hard way how good God is. Although it hurt me to find out that I tried to do something I knew God was leading me to do and I couldn't do it, I found myself disappointed. I still knew that I must do what God had me do no matter what the outcome was. In the past, I did some things and it just didn't work out. But I know, but eventually, if I kept listening to what God guided me to do, everything would work out. So I pressed on, doing what God led me to do, and eventually things worked out, but not the way I thought they would. In the midst of my having to make a decision about whether I'm going to move my family down to Tampa, we lost my older brother. And it was kind of hard on me, a little harder than I expected it to be, because I lived right around the corner from my brother and his family. And I wondered what it would be like for me to have to move away if they needed something. So I was very perplexed as to what to do regarding my move. What ended up happening through living through faith and listening to God's will, we kept our home in Georgia. I moved down to Florida by myself at first for almost 2 years living in an apartment, and God eventually blessed us to buy a second home in Florida while we maintained a house in Georgia. And that would not have been possible if I had listened to the worldly way of doing things. But listening to God, things worked out. Don't get it twisted. Don't think that trying to do God's will never lead you to some moments of disappointment, because sometimes you will be disappointed. But no, God is always in control, and you will be blessed eventually. I can tell you that if you have God in any decision you have to make, there's always peace in the decision, and God will provide you the provisions in whatever direction that you need to go. Matthew 21, 1 through 6 says, as Jesus and his disciples approached Jerusalem, they came to the town of Bethphage on the Mount of Olives. Jesus sent two of them on ahead. Go into the village over there, he said. As soon as you enter it, you will see a donkey tied there, with its coat beside it. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone asks you what you're doing, just say, the Lord needs them, and he will immediately let you take them. This took place to fulfill the prophecy that said, tell the people of Israel, look, your king is coming to you. He is humble, riding on a donkey, riding on a donkey's coat. The two disciples did as Jesus commanded. The point of that passage was that the disciples did exactly what Jesus instructed them to do, even though I'm quite sure they didn't understand why Jesus wanted them to do what he instructed, but they were obedient nonetheless. One thing you must understand is that not all that God will have you do is all about you. God may be placing you in a position that you can be a blessing to someone else, or to prepare for an event that God will usher in. Don't get it twisted. No matter what you are going through or have experienced, God is still in control.